Hi, my name is Santiago, and for this homework, I'm gonna talk about a topic I haven't really uh, delved before. So we're gonna talk about Freud Dostoyevsky. He was a famous writer and a famous author of Russia. He's really impacted the Russian literature and literature as a whole, but I have never read or really searched him because his books are extremely massive and extremely convoluted and complicated. And I was never too much into historical type books. But a few years ago, my brother is studying maestria. And he told me that in one of his classes, he had to read Dostoevsky's work, and it was really interesting, and he started to just telling me how good it was. But that's all I ever heard of him, that he had really good books, but they were really big books, so I never really got an interest, or I never used my time to search him up. And I took the chance for this activity to do so because I almost know nothing of the guy. So, Freud Dostoevsky, he was Russian, and his family worked at a hospital. He had his house in the state of the hospital. So he normally saw things that kids at his age were sheltered from. So he lived a good life. He wasn't poor, but eventually he got sent to study in Moscow and other places. And as he was sent to study, his father died, possibly murdered by people close to him. And he always felt also out of place with his comrades, with his friends, with the people he studied with. And so he eventually graduated and became friends with a group of, how can I say it, radical writers. And eventually the government came, rounded them up, and basically sentenced them to be executed. And right before they were executed, delivery came, and they said that Dostoevsky was not to be executed. He was to be sent to Serbia to work, to serve 4 years of labor sentence, intense labor sentence. So that was almost hell for him. But after he got out, after those 4 years, he began his life as a writer. And we're gonna talk about four of his most famous books. The first one is called Notes from the Underground. On this book, Dostoevsky tells us about how we as humans tend to seek pain and suffering. We never put an end to it. We always just say, oh, if I have this thing, my suffering will end. Or if I have this thing, my life will be better. But the actual thing that Dostoevsky is talking in this book is that it won't. Our life won't be better after we get this or after we fix this. He tells, like, if we fix world hunger, people are just gonna tell us you can suffer this other way, and we're gonna do that because that's human nature in some way. And how we set goals to prolong and avoid our suffering, but we never sometimes even deal with it until it's too late. And he this may sound a little bit negative or pessimistic, but what he's trying to say is we're always gonna have something to suffer for, so we need to focus on other stuff beside what's making us suffer, because that will never end. We're just gonna have to carry that with us always. So it's a really melancholic kind of topic. And on another book of his, we're gonna talk about four. This was the first one. On the second book we're gonna talk, it's Crime and Punishment, a really renowned and well-known book and well-studied even. Uh, on this book is a story about a man. He's a man that sees himself as vicious and intense. And one day he sees a lady that has more money and more things than him, and he says, "I'm going to kill her and take her things because I deserve them." And as he's doing that, the sister of that woman comes in and he kills her too. And eventually he realizes that everything he has done is wrong and that he's a really remorseful kind of and compassionate kind of person. So he turns himself in to be given the punishment for his crimes. Crime and punishment. But this tells us, first of all, we don't really know ourselves to begin with. All our lives we try to understand us, and that's our mission, if you want to say it that way, to finally understand us and understand ourselves. And that's the main problem with this guy. He didn't understand himself. He didn't know who he was. He thought he was someone, like we all do, but it resulted that he was another person that he didn't even think of. And also, he's a really charismatic protagonist. He's real. You feel his pain, even though he just like murdered two ladies. But that's the thing of this book. It gives us a Christian side that it's throughout the life of Dostoevsky. That is where even if you do bad things, even the worst person that does terrible things, even that person deserves a kind of sympathy, because we all do. We all deserve a kind of sympathy, and we all deserve to be looked with sympathy despite our actions, because we're all humans on in the end. So it's a really interesting topic that we normally don't give. We always think that is everything is black and white, but no, there are gray areas that we need to think and really understand them. But yes, it was a really intense book. And the third one, it's called The Idiot. On this book, Dostoevsky first tell us a little bit more of the moments before him and his friends were executed. Well, he wasn't, but yes. And he tells us that at that very end moment, he began to see a beauty in life. Some moment that he wished he could trade his life, even with a beggar, to just breathe and feel the wind in his head and be there, because that's the beauty of that we never think of until the very end. And he begins to talk and describe this book as how would it be if we always felt that gratitude to be alive, because normally we don't, we just go with it. But if we were truly grateful for living, how would we be? And he said we would be like idiots for the rest of the world, because it just wouldn't make sense to be that way. And it's a really interesting way of seeing life, because yeah, we're normally not grateful for what we have until we lost that stuff. But if we didn't, if we always were grateful, we would look weird in a way. But it's a bad thing and also a good thing that we can ponder on and really think about our lives. And it's a really good starting point for everyone almost. And on his fourth book that we're gonna talk, it's the brothers Kamarasov or Kamaradzov. It's weird name to pronounce. It's Russian, but yes. Here Dostoevsky tells us a story about Christianity, and in this book, I don't know if you know about this, but in the Bible there's said that supposedly Jesus would come back for us and will make our lives better and everything. In this book, that happens. Jesus came back, but he came back to Spain in a really important moment of Spanish history. Catholicism was at its peak, and the leader of the Catholic Church basically got to Jesus and said, "Okay, so you're coming back, and we fail everything that you have teach us. We don't do it right. We never will. So in order for our society to still work, you're gonna go to jail, basically." So uh, it tells us that we can't set that standards as Christianity, as anything that we want, Buddhism, everything. Humans won't work with that. Humans won't ever fulfill that need to be perfect, because we aren't. We are greedy. We are really bad people in a way sometimes, but we can't say that, oh, because we're flawed I can't become this, or oh, if I just don't have this I will be perfect, because we won't. And that's also the best part about humanity, in a way, that we are flawed but we always want to not be flawed. But in this book, what Dostoevsky talks a lot about is that we need to accept that we are flawed and that we're not perfect and we'll never reach X standards, but we need to, over that acceptance, carry that flawedness with us and improve for the better, and improve for our lives, for the lives of people around us. Because if we don't do that, we are always gonna be focused on, we need to get better, I need to get better at this, I need to get better at that, but not how can I contribute myself, how can I make myself useful in a way that it's not only altruistic, it's just good for everyone and for yourself, and also kind of greedy because you want to be better. But yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting that religion, and sometimes even the laws don't really, we won't live up to them in a way. We will always fail at something, and we will never be perfect, and that's good. So yeah, it's a really interesting way of putting. This video was supposed to be 3 minutes long, and it's almost 13 minutes. So I will end. Well, brief conclusion. Dostoevsky has, at least for my perspective, I worked at a library, and we always joked around that Russian literature was so pessimistic and so boring and really hard to get into. But, and it is in some ways, but it's not just pessimistic, it's melancholy and even hopeful at times, depending on how you see it. But if you just see it through one perspective, it will be pessimistic. But if you see the full picture, you will realize that it's more realistic, you would say, with hints of optimism there, and hints of even pessimism. It's just an amalgamation of everything that we know, and it's just not that simple. It's not black and white, and that's the beauty of this. It's a great scheme of colors that sometimes we won't even understand, but it's bigger than we think. And that's the beauty of this, and that's why I'm grateful for doing this research today. And yeah, it was something that I will carry with me, and I will try to get more into it, and learn more about it, because it was really impactful and really interesting. So, thanks for your time and thanks for listening.